So welcome. This is the webinar on how the Alberta school system works. This is geared for the year 2017, but also for what we know so far for the year 2017-18. So thank you for joining us tonight. So this webinar is co-provided to you with Calgary's Child Magazine and also in partnership with Professional Parenting Canada. A few housekeeping things before we start. Everybody's muted, so don't worry about your background noise. If there's a dog barking or baby's crying, no worries. Raise your hand in the question box to the right. There's a little hand where you can click, and then that notifies me for a question. And that way I can just unmute you and we can talk back and forth. Don't worry, your name does not show up anywhere here. It's totally anonymous. But if you ask a question and I unmute you, we can hear your voice and my voice. We can't see anybody. So no worries there. The opinions expressed here are those of the presenter and do not necessarily reflect Calgary's Child Magazine or Professional Parenting. This is copyright 2017. We ask that you not take the file and share it, sell it, lend it, or provide it to anyone else. So, my name is Judy Arnall, and I am a certified Canadian family life educator, and I teach parenting. I've been teaching parenting in Alberta and across Canada for the last 20 years. I've written 2 books. One is on what's normal child capabilities, and it's called Parenting with Patience. There's also some handy tips on there to handle parenting stress and child stress and all those good things. And my other book is Discipline Without Distress. It's a book on how to handle most parenting parenting challenges of babies to teenagers without using any punishment, no timeouts, no consequences, no bribery. So if you're interested, both those books are available for sale on Amazon and in your nearest Chapters or bookseller. I have to say, they've been translated into 5 languages too. So if you want to find them in a different language, feel free to contact me. And I'm a bit of a realist. So I'm a mom. I get the research, but sometimes I don't always apply it in my own home. So I have 5 children. They range in age from 15 to 25. So I have graduated 4 children through the system. They all have their high school diploma. And 3 of those children are university graduates or will be graduates by the end of the month. Yay! So although I've mostly home educated my kids, at some point in time they've been through mostly all the systems: public, private, French immersion, online, and home education. I do 2 parenting courses in the city. So I teach a really awesome normative parenting course called Parent Effectiveness Training at the University of Calgary through continuing education. It runs fall and winter. So if you're interested in making your great parenting relationship even better, it's a really good course to enhance communication. I also teach the Alberta Health Services Terrific Toddlers program, and that's for parents of ages 1 to 4. It's for all parents in the province. It's a great 4-week webinar course on any issue you can imagine: picky eating, discipline, sleeping, toilet training, all those wonderful things that parents have to deal with. So let's start with preschool. Now, this is the time of the year all parents are going, I gotta line up and sign up my child for preschool. And it's very interesting because I thought that preschool is the norm. But if you look at the chart from the OECD, in Canada, which is kind of down, all right, Canada, where are you? Here. All right, third from the right. Only about 50% of children are enrolled in preschool programs, so programs from age 3 to 5. And I thought it was somewhere near 90% because every child I know goes to preschool. But no, it's 50%. We're one of the lowest attending countries. And what's interesting is even though kids are the lowest attenders at preschool, we rank pretty high in the PISA results. The PISA results are the Program of International Student Assessment. So every 3 years, about 70 countries around the world give their students, about 1,500 students that are age 15, exams in science, reading, and mathematics. And it's a standardized exam so it can compare countries. And these were our results from 2012. You've probably already heard that we were slipping a bit in the math section where we came out of the top 10. But I think it really speaks very well to if only half our kids go to preschool, we're still in the top 10 of the countries. And look at 2015. These are the latest results. And in Canada, we're 10th in math, 3rd in reading, and 7th in science. So we have brought up our math scores good. That's really interesting, I found. Okay, so what about the Alberta school system? When does your child have to go? Under our current School Act regulations, kids must be at least 4 years old on or before March 1st to start kindergarten in the fall. So there's a little bit of leeway there. Do you start them early or do you start them later? A lot of parents and teachers, I don't think I've talked to very many teachers that recommend starting them early. If you can delay your child a year, they're always going to be the older child in the class, and that really helps during the junior high years when they're trying to grasp abstract concepts. It helps give boys an extra year of growth in their height, and it also helps kids just mature a bit more socially and emotionally. But again, it's a parent's choice. When the new Education Act comes up, when that eventually gets passed, it's supposed to be passed last year, then this year, and it hasn't been passed yet. But when it does, it's proposing that we move the start date to the end of December. So maybe for the next year, 2018, 2019, it will be, the cutoff point will be December. Now, ages 6 to 16 is compulsory education. A child has to be registered somewhere in Alberta if they are 6 years of age or older on September 1st. And all children must be registered until they turn 16. And again, the new Education Act might be pushing that age to 17. So what should children know before they start school? Well, for grade 1, all they need to know is to write their name. That's it. They don't need to know their colors and their letters and their numbers or how to read and write. They don't need to know those things. Just the ability to write their name is the universal standard starter in grade 1. It helps if they have language skills. The more language a child has, the more they're able to hold their own emotionally and socially among their peers. So when their little friend is taking their paper in grade 1, they have the ability to say, no, that's my paper. So how do you build language skills before they start school? You read, you talk, you sing, you engage them. Talk to them, engage in that language. This slide shows that the window, the sensitive period for language is from even before birth to about the early years, about 3 years of age. Huge sensitivity there. Children are wired to learn any language in the world, and they can learn 1, 2, 3 languages at the same time. Yes, they interchange words, but they don't get confused. They will become proficient in 3 languages if that keeps up. As far as higher cognitive functions, there's no magic window or sensitive period. So whether a child starts learning piano lessons at age 6 or whether they learn at age 12, doesn't matter. They can do just as fine. So how does the system work? Well, there's about 600,000 school-age students in Alberta. Now, the education system is governed by the province, not the federal government. And it's governed by the School Act and overseen by the Ministry of Education. Our current minister is Honorable David Eggen of Alberta Education. Children are funded for education until they turn age 20. So if they're age 20 on September 1st, they're no longer funded. But like my one son who was actually turned 20 on September 4th, the courses he started that school year were funded. Thank goodness, because they are pretty expensive if they're not funded. A $60 course will cost you $600 if they are over age 20. So you have until age 20 for your children to finish high school and all their upgrading until it gets expensive. Now, kindergarten is optional in Alberta. Children do not have to go to that. And one thing you need to know is the same Alberta Program of Studies is taught in every course, regardless if it's public, private, or charter schools. The only exception is home education, where the parents can decide to use the Alberta Program of Studies or not. And yes. Now, how each school chooses to approach the outcomes is up to the schools. A diploma is not required for post-secondary education, but some programs may require it, so it's good to check if you have a child nearing that age. By the way, when we say post-secondary, we mean universities, colleges, trade schools, those schools that happen after grade 12. Now, every school has some type of fee for resources, supplies, except for home education, in which you actually get funding. All the teachers are certified in every school by the provincial body, which is the Alberta Teachers Association, except for home education. Parents do not have to be certified. But home education is supervised by a certified teacher. The provincial achievement tests in grade 6 and 9 are optional. Students are encouraged to write it in school, but they don't have to write it. So parents can opt out of that if it goes against their philosophy. The only exception is diploma exams in grade 12. If students want a diploma, they have to write a diploma exam in English and social studies. A lot of schools start registration in January for the following fall, and a lot of schools do have waiting lists, sometimes up to years. So if you have your eye on a particular school, you might want to contact them when your baby is born to see what you need to do and how long the wait might be. General subjects in each grade are mathematics, English language arts, science, social studies. Those are what we call the core courses. The optional courses, which aren't really options, but they're supplementary courses, are art, drama, health, music, and phys ed. Okay, so let's start looking at school types. For most children in the system, it's public. Public schools come in two flavors. There's public, and then there's Catholic public. Now, I know in other provinces, Catholic is part of the private school system, but in Alberta, Catholic is just as much funded as the public system and is very much considered the public system. The public is run by the Calgary Board of Education or Edmonton Public Schools. They're different school authorities that are public school authorities. And I don't know how many they are in Alberta, but there's quite a few of them. Excuse me, depending on where you live. For example, if you lived just outside of Calgary, you might be under Rocky View School Division. There's lots of schools. For example, the Calgary Board of Education is 90,000 students in 200 schools. It is one of the biggest school boards in Western Canada. This is their website, and the nature of public schools is they take everybody. If you live in their boundary, they have to take you. Absolutely. Now, Catholic schools are governed by different Catholic. There's, for example, in Calgary, there's a Calgary Catholic School District. In Okotoks, there's the Christ the Redeemer School Division, and there's East Central Catholic School Division near Edmonton. So there's a lot of different Catholic divisions too. They have about, for example, Catholic in Calgary has 44,000 students in 100 schools. So they're second biggest. There's their website. Their requirements are they do require that one parent is baptized or the student is baptized, but again, it depends on how full the school is. If the school isn't very full, they will accept non-baptized families. Public schools have been growing. They have been catering to what the public wants. So public wants a lot of different types of schools, and so these different programs are available within the public system. There's languages, and I won't read them out, but you can see them here. There's faith-based schools. There's sports, arts, or Canadian studies focus. There's special education schools, maybe a special philosophy such as Montessori, self-directed, traditional learning, which is the back to basics approach. There's boys' schools, there's girls' schools, there's schools that are only for home education support, and there's even part-time school. Yes, CBE Learn is an example of having a part-time school where only 2 cores can be provided and the parent provides the rest. So children only go 2 days a week. There's also online and correspondence, or what we call cyber schools, which are home-based but school-controlled. They're called distance education, and that has certainly been growing too. Now, back to those public Catholic schools comprise about 90% of the students in the province. Independent and private schools are 4%, or about 24,000 children in the province. In Calgary, there's about 45. Now, they get 60 to 70% of the funding from government because their parents pay taxes too. And they make up the difference in charging parents tuition fees from anywhere from $3,000 to $25,000 per child per year. There's often bursaries available. The benefits of private school are often the student-teacher ratio is anywhere from 1 teacher to 17 or 1 teacher to 12 children. So it's a smaller student-teacher ratio. There's a list of these at private schools if you Google private schools. Now, the thing about private schools is they can refuse students. They have a certain admission criteria, and if your student doesn't meet it, they are legally allowed to say, sorry, because you have the public school as your default. A lot of them, too, have different categories. They're language-based, faith-based, sports or arts focused, special ed, philosophical. Some are university prep schools, and some are back to basics or traditional learning schools, which focus on rote learning by memorization. Now, there's 13 charter schools in the province, which make up about 1.5% of the schools, and they have about 9,000 children in them. These are publicly funded schools, and they answer directly to the government. They are not governed under any school board. They began in 1994 under Premier Ralph Klein, and there's often a heavy volunteer component to the schools because they don't charge tuition fees. They do need a lot of parent help. They also have a lot of parent say too, which is kind of nice. You can find these at this website. And again, they have different topics like a science school, girls school, arts academy, Indigenous teaching, gifted ed, multiple intelligences, or different languages too. There are Francophone schools in Alberta, which are totally French. They're for French families, so the assumption there is that the parents speak French at home and can support the child in French learning. Now, there's also French immersion schools, which support the child under the understanding that parents don't necessarily have French ability to help their child. And that's okay. So children can go to French immersion and be totally supported within the school and not at home. So French immersion entry points are usually kindergarten, grade 1, or grade 7. Again, some schools are more popular than others, so there can be waiting lists. A lot of schools use a lottery system because it seems more fair. So even if you're living across the street, across from a school, your children may not be able to attend that school because the school may get admissions via the lottery system. So they put applicants in a hat and they pull out based on chance. Most schools in Calgary are geographical. So where you live is where your child goes to school. So the designated school may be full because a lot of areas in Calgary like Tuscany or Cranston have a lot of young families and not many schools. Most of the schools were built in the 60s, 70s in inner city Calgary or inner city. I'm sure Edmonton's having the same issue. And then the newer schools are built on the suburbs where a lot of more families can afford a house. So you have a lot of competition for the newer schools and not so much competition for inner city schools. So where you buy your house does have a bearing on where your child can go. Although a lot of the topic schools are, children can be bussed in from outside. They will be spending a lot of time on a school bus though. Alberta also supports home education, and that comprises about 2% of the population, or 12,000 students. Home education is actually bigger than the number of students in charter schools. Now, there's two types of home education. There's what we call traditional, which is parent-controlled, and there's also blended, which is half school and half home education, parent-controlled. And again, you can do part-time school at home here. So on the traditional home education, parents must register with a private school or a school board in Alberta, and there's about 50 types. They don't have to go to their local Edmonton or Calgary public. They can register with a school in High Level or Okotoks or anywhere that will accept home education students. And that's why we call them borderless students. You don't have to pay school fees. In fact, you get funded $835 per year. You have to turn in receipts for each child to help offset the costs of resources. You have to register your child by September 30th in order to get the funding, and it's governed by the Home Education Regulations, which is different than the Alberta Program of Studies. So parents can choose to teach the Alberta Program of Studies, or they can choose to teach whatever they want. They can take a philosophy anywhere from classical or Montessori or just unit studies, or they can unschool, which is using no curriculum. They have to undergo 2 visits a year from a certified teacher, and there's no exams or testing. Unless children want a diploma, then they would have to undergo the social and the English diploma exams in grade 12. Blended is half and half, so keep in mind that online and correspondence courses are not home education. That is school controlled, just virtual school, cyber school. A blended is governed by half School Act and half Home Education Act. And a good place to look at this if you're considering home education is Alberta Home Education Parents Association, or ahaps.ca. And they can help you out getting started, what you need to do, requirements, and all that thing. High school homeschooling can be 20 to 80%, half and half. Well, part school controlled, part parent controlled, or it can still be 100% parent controlled. Now, like I said, home-based school is cyber school, but it's also called distance education, and that is school controlled, and it's done through online courses or correspondence, usually from about grade 4 up. They have to teach the Alberta Program of Studies. Parents have no control in this. It's just like if you send your child down the street to a regular school. It's not considered home education. There's no choice in content, marking, assignments, resources, or curriculum. Now, there is some choice in pace, though. Common ones here are CBE Learn, Argyle in Edmonton, Alberta Distance Learning Center, Rocky View Virtual, St. Paul's Virtual School. There's a lot of virtual schools coming up with the ease of teaching over the internet. Now, keep in mind, some schools just present curriculum on a screen. Some schools want parents to print off and the child does the work and then they can scan them back. And some schools actually do live webinars to teach the children, much like you're experiencing now. So there's quite a difference. So ask your school, is there any live teaching components? Because that seems to increase student engagement. It is school, so there's no funding. It's not like home education, and fees are charged. Now, back to home education. Homeschoolers do not have to follow the Alberta Program of Studies. These are the 20 outcomes that children need to meet by the age of 20. So it doesn't go year by year, grade by grade. It goes by, do they make progress in these 20 outcomes per year? So that's why there's no testing, is you can't test by grade because a lot of families don't follow the grades. How much time does home education take? At an elementary level, it takes anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes a day. I know parents come to me and they say, what? Children are in school 6 hours a day. How can you do it in 10 to 30 minutes? Well, because it's economies of scale. You're not dealing with 30 kids. You're dealing with one. So it takes much, much less time. For junior high, maybe about an hour a day, and for grade 12, my grade 12s can get done in 2 to 3 hours per day. And of course, there's no homework. Yay! Now, what I want to talk about too is brain development. So children's brains, the last part of their brain development actually starts from the bottom of the brainstem up to the back, up to here, to the front. The front is the last to develop, anywhere from age 13 to 25. Children don't remember a whole lot before age 12. They get their abstract thinking skills around then. But it's important to remember from age 0 to 6, children's brains are creating pathways like this diagram between neurons. So as they learn from 0 to 6, they're building lots and lots of pathways. So one brain cell will send a neurotransmitter over this gap here to the neighboring brain cell, and that neurotransmitter creates a path. And it fills that gap, or what we call synapses, between brain cells. So by age 6, it starts pruning, and that's good. Pruning is good because they can't sustain, the brain can't sustain this. So what children don't use, they start to lose. So if your child, say mom speaks Mandarin, dad speaks French, and they go to an English school, they can start learning all 3 languages. Kids are wired to learn any language at birth. And if they drop, say, the French, then those pathways tend to get pruned if they're not using it on a continual basis. So the Mandarin and the English will keep going, but not the French. And that's just cognitive development. So a lot of our brain research still follows the stages that Jean Piaget came up with in terms of academic development. So children are still pretty pre-operational until about age 6. They're still in the land of magical thinking. Their compliance rate to parent requests are still about 40%. So about 60% of the time they're not really listening to parents, and that is just normal development. That's not a discipline issue, that's a development issue. But what that means is it's very hard for them to sit still and listen, and all those skills expected in grade 1 until they have move into that concrete operational stage. And it's demonstrated here. We call executive function that ability to have some self-control. So can your child take turns? Can they have mental flexibility and planning? So when you see two little kids playing a game of, what's that one called? Candyland. Candyland. When a child rolls a dice and advances colors, and that makes the child who's playing with them have to change their tactics a bit. That's a little bit of mental flexibility and planning. They need working memory, so in order to follow two-step instructions, they have to hold the first step in their brain while they go for the second step. And that focus, that ability to sit, listen, concentrate while they're sitting around circle time and try and push out those distractions as the kid next to them that's poking them. Children do not have a lot of this until they start school. So I can show you on this graph, from age 3 to 5, there's a huge leap in that executive function, as you can see. And then it kind of plateaus through the school age years, and then you see a little bit more bigger leap in the teen years, right? And then it peaks at age 25, and then it goes down from there. So you can see if a child is starting preschool at age 3, they're not going to have the same sitting ability, turn-taking ability, and that kind of skills until you can see the difference at age 6 when they start school. They have a huge leap in those skills, a huge leap in language development too. So that's why children don't start school till age 6 in Alberta. In Finland, they don't even start until age 7. In England, they start at age 4. So look at the difference between the self-control a 4-year-old has and a 7-year-old has. So you can see in Finland why they're near the top of the charts in the PISA results is that they start children later. So early schooling is not always beneficial for children as long as it's play-based and they have adult attention. That's what they really need in those years to develop these skills. So the Alberta Program of Studies, once they start grade 1, they have about 1,400 outcomes per grade. Our program of studies is outcome-based. This is what we sort of chop school up into. So kindergarten, they start at age 5. In Alberta, grades 1 to 6 is called elementary. Grades 7 to 9 is called junior high, but sometimes you have a school kind of half and half there, and that's what we call middle school, grades 5 to 9. Grades 10 to 12 is called high school, and anything after that is what we call post-secondary schools. So the Alberta Program of Studies, like I said, is outcome-based, which means it has targets to hit, but it doesn't dictate how to teach, how those targets are met, or what resources can be used in those teaching methods. So that's pretty well up to the teacher. So that's why in one school, let's take a grade 1 science topic, creating color. So in one school, they may use a method of giving kids Play-Doh and teaching them how colors mix in that, how they can compare, how they can make them lighter and darker. In another school, they may teach these outcomes by letting them paint or taking them to an art studio where they're using the color wheel to make things, or a printing press. That would be interesting. So the outcome is children have to identify colors in a variety of natural manufactured objects. But how they choose to do that can be so many ways, which is kind of nice. It gives a lot of flexibility to learning. Now, outcomes are based in high school on courses, not per grade. So there's a whole lot of different courses in high school. How you get to know what your child is learning in each grade can be found at this website. So if you have your camera nearby, take a picture of this, this link or screenshot it now. Okay, so now you can go to these and figure out what the outcomes are for grade 1. And it's written in nice parent-friendly language. I like that. And you have grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, and all the way up to grade 10 where it's course-based. And this kind of shows you, I don't know how many people we have here with a high school child, but it shows you what the requirements are in grade 10, grade 11, grade 12. So English and social has to be to the grade 12 level. Math and science has to be to grade 11 level or 10 credits. Children have to take phys ed in grade 10, comm in grade 11. They have to take some grade 12 credit options. So that's a whole other webinar, high school. But if you have a child in high school, and stay tuned at the end and we'll answer your questions. So each high school course is about 1 to 5 credits, and 1 credit represents 25 hours of coursework. So each grade, kids do about 35 credits, so grade 10, grade 11, grade 12. Okay, and there's core courses and different streams. In Alberta, this is where we begin streaming children, often in grade 11. So in grade 10, they often take common core courses, and grade 11, they branch off into what they need, which is kind of nice because it's later. We don't start streaming kids at age 10. And like I said, everybody has to write diploma exams in social or English studies. English for diploma exams. They can write them several times a year. And if they're under 19, the diploma exams count for 30% of their final mark, and they still need a 70% part course mark. But if they're older than 19, those exams count for 100%. So where do people learn? This came up in our Inspiring Education talks that I went to in 2009 and 2011. And you can see here from participants' input that people learn in many ways and many places. These are ways they've learned, people, experience, school, and also in many places they learn. Volunteering, travel, sports, museums, lectures, lots of ways. I kind of like Dale's cone of learning because it shows you that the retention rate of how we learn. So if we read or hear words, about 30% of what we hear and read we'll remember 2 weeks later. So from this webinar tonight, in 2 weeks you'll remember about 30% of it. Now, if you're like me and teaching the webinar, so you'll remember about 90% of it because you go that much further in absorbing it. So what this says is the more kids have experiential learning, the more they'll retain it. So look for schools that do a lot of experiential learning and not just make kids sit in desks and read textbooks and workbooks. So Inspiring Education came out of our government in these 2 years, and it kind of looked at what we want to teach kids, overhauling the whole education system. We want kids to be engaged thinkers, ethical citizens, and an entrepreneurial spirit. And from that, what we're doing is we're moving from content, stuffing content into their heads, to Competencies, what can they do with what they know? So it's not what they know, but what they can do with what they know. So moving from content to competencies. So education should grow 10 of these competencies. So somewhere in the future, we're going to look at curriculum redesign. So looking at what children need to know out of these 10 competencies to prepare them for the next 50 years. We don't know what jobs they're going to have in 50 years, so we're kind of guessing, well, if they have the competencies, they can be open-ended to take on lots of different jobs, and especially jobs that haven't been invented yet. That's a good thing. There's some policy shifts in that too, where it's less focus on the school, more focus on education. So again, maybe more cyber schools are coming up, less centered on the system, more on the learner, less on content, more on competencies, and less on technology to support the teacher, and more on technology to support sharing of knowledge. So more use of technological devices. In some schools now, children are invited to bring their own cell phones, iPads, laptops to share in technology. That opens up a whole can of worms, but that's where we're moving. The provincial achievement tests have been replaced by the student learning assessment, so it's not so much measuring what kids know at the end of the year, but more needs assessment by what they need for the year, so administered at the beginning of the year. It's moving towards not hours logged, but competencies gained, and children can be more encouraged to learn deep rather than wide. The diploma exams are staying, and it's moving to more digital-based. Okay, now you have to ask yourself, what school is the best fit for my child? Because every child is different. They have individual personalities and temperaments. So temperament is what a child is born with. Children are born from being very easygoing to very high need, and everything in between. So what is the best fit? These are temperament traits of children. Some children are more persistent, sensitive, less adaptable, more intense, less regular, more active, more negative first reaction, and more moody. Some children are all the opposite of that. So what's the best fit for your child? And you are their primary observers, teachers. You know your child best, so you know if your child would welcome a more structured school, such as a traditional learning center, or would they welcome a more play-based experiential school, such as Montessori, Waldorf, or unschooling. So you should, and check out a lot of schools. Now's the time of the year. A lot of schools have open houses. They welcome you to come out to parent nights. So if you have a few schools you have an eye on, phone them, find out when their parent orientation or their open houses are, and go check them out. See what you like about the school. Ask questions. Other factors are, how much time do you want your child to spend on a bus? That's big in Calgary or Edmonton, because we're getting really, really spread out. A lot of times, if you send your child to a specialty school across the city, keep in mind that the friends they make at school, they can probably only see at school. If they're invited to birthday parties, you're going to spend a lot of time driving, maybe a lot more sleepovers. Other factors are degree of parental influence. So there's a whole continuum there. If you want 100% control over your child's education, well, home education's for you. If you want 50% control, well, maybe a blended program is what you need. If you want lots of say in the parent council, maybe a charter school is better. Definitely choose to go to your parent advisory council or your school council meetings, because that's where you really learn about what your school is about, programs. It's really a good way to get involved, support your school. They're not focused on fundraising like they used to be in the past. They really are a partnership between parents, the school and working together for the best outcomes for the children. Yeah, another factor might be where the siblings are. Now, again, you don't have to choose the same school for each child. Each child is different. You may have a child who's a very extrovert and would love a social school. You may have a child who's an introvert and thrives at a smaller type school. Maybe your child's an extrovert and needs to stay in home education where they can go out into the community the whole day and socialize. And maybe your child's an introvert where they might like half and half, maybe part-time school. Your philosophy of education is important. Do you believe in rote learning, memorization? Maybe that's the traditional learning school. Do you believe in uniforms? Maybe that's a private school. Do you believe in play-based education? You know, that could be one of those different types of schools. But overall, I would say, in talking to most parents, the number one factor is the teacher. The teacher is what school means to your child. They love the teacher. So if you like the teacher, that's a good fit. Happy teacher, happy child. And that's what your school experience is for your child, is all about their relationship with the teacher and the classmates. And are they having fun? Are they looking forward to going to school? Because they should. If they're not looking forward to school, maybe there's the not right fit. So maybe look at what other factors, other schools, other options there are. And we're lucky in Alberta. We have a ton of options. I know a lot of parents feel it's confusing, it's overwhelming, the amount of options, but it's good once you're in the system. Keep in mind you only register for a year. So if it's a bad fit that year, you can change it for next year very easily. It's easily adaptable for kids too. They can do that. If you're interested, there's education consultants out there. I do education consulting through professionalparenting.ca. I'm not really a certified teacher though, but if you're looking for certified teachers, I know Home and School Learning Connections. They have certified teachers that can help you sort out education, or if you have an unmotivated child who needs support, maybe a child bullied in school, they can help support you with all the education options out there too. Okay, so we've reached the end of our presentation. If you want to leave now, I want to thank you for coming. And if you want to stay behind, I'm just going to, if you have any private questions and you got to run now, feel free to email me. I'm at jarnall@shaw.ca. Check out my website for a lot of good parenting webinars. And hope to see you again in the future. And I'm going to